Howdy all, grab yourselves a beer, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion, and it's time to go through the Legion League FAQ that was released today. Today, my time being Tuesday Australian time, may well have been released yesterday for you by the time that you see this. Developers have just put out some information about the league and some of the frequently asked questions. Unfortunately, not the ones that I've most wanted to see, but we'll have a quick discussion through them. I want to go through each of these questions, their answer, and if I think it's particularly significant, I'll make some extra comments. Firstly, when can we expect the changes to the map tab that specifically help standard users? So players in the standard league, if like me you're mostly a temporary league player, you won't have encountered this bug, but the standard leagues, the map stash tabs have been pretty much unusable. The reason for that is that maps that are from different eras of the Atlas, so the eras being the Atlas of Worlds maps, then the maps that were released in War for the Atlas, then the maps that were released in Betrayal, and then the ones that were released in Synthesis. If a stash tab has a map tab has one type of maps, it then doesn't allow any of the others in it. And so this means that for standard players, you wind up in this awkward situation where everything that you're running at the moment is dropping synthesis era maps, but you've still got a big collection of Betrayal era ones, bigger collection of World for the Atlas and Atlas of Worlds maps. And so it's a really difficult situation to deal with if you're a standard player. And this is being fixed. What's going to happen is you'll be able to bulk convert your old style maps if you want to. It's an opt-in process, so if your tab is full of War for the Atlas maps, you'll be able to press one button and that will turn all of them into same tier, same rarity, same quality maps of the current series. So, you've got, say, if you have 55 tower maps from the Betrayal era when it was a tier 15, and you press this button, those 55 will become some tier 15s from the Synthesis era. So you might end up with a bunch of lava lakes. I don't know the exact mechanics on how this works, but I believe it preserves the rarity of the maps, it preserves the quality, preserves their corruption status, and then just re-rolls their mods and potentially re-rolls the mods. That's not actually been confirmed. So we'll see how that works when it comes out. But any of the possibilities will be an absolute boon for those of you that play the standard league. Do the new Legion jewels change the passive skills within the radius of the jewel on the passive skill tree, or just the keystone? And basically, this is the only question that's answered about the Legion jewels. This is not really answered thoroughly. My gut belief from what's been written and from the careful wording that they've used is that the Val jewel does change everything on the tree, and that the other ones may or may not. They may only affect keystones, or they may affect various notables as well, or they may affect more. We're just going to find out more about these over time. I really hope that the concerns that I've got about these jewels, specifically with them being an absolute nightmare for for people to trade securely, I really hope that these are addressed somehow. I think the best way for GGG to do that would be to provide either a data dump of all of the different jewels, or potentially a limited data dump where once a certain seed number has been discovered, they host a description of everything it does. The reason I think this is important is that, one, the wiki will be misused by players. Players will, they'll earn trust on the wiki by making a few trustworthy edits, then they'll get onto it and they'll own jewel number 1123. They will then go and modify what 1123 does to make it seem awesome. They'll start advertising in trade chat, hey, check out how awesome this jewel is. And then you'll go and you'll buy it in good faith, believing that the wiki is truthful, only to then find out, suck it in. Person's done a dirty on the community and themselves. I have seen this done in other games, and in fact in EVE Online, which is a game that's much more about player versus player interactions than Path of Exile is, actually use a bunch of sort of dishonest trading tricks there. although my main ones there are creating artificial hype in items. So I'll buy up everything. I'll buy up all of an item, then I'll spread rumors that there's going to be a big change to it. A new patch is going to be launched that's going to make this item really in demand, and then I'll sell into the hype, laugh all the way to the bank. In EVE Online, I'm fine with that morally. It is a player versus player game. In Path of Exile, I don't like real loss PvP elements in what's fundamentally a PvE game. Whereas EVE Online, it's fundamentally a PvP game. So anyways, all my concerns, there's been a lot of discussion on the video I made about those duels. A lot of people think I'm overstating it. A lot of people think that I'm wrong. I hope that those people are proven right, but I still stand by all the concerns I've got. Anyway, that's enough on those duels. When can we see the changes to some of the melee-based Ascendancy classes? Also, we've seen a lot of non-melee reveals so far, or will we see some melee ones soon? Hopefully soon, just putting the finishing touches on them and then we'll reveal. I think it's a good idea to get things right before revealing them. It's one of those things. It ends up, if you reveal something and then you discover, oh shit, that's much more powerful than we thought it was, and we've got to then go and nerf it. It's better just to reveal the nerf stats already, rather than to go through that experience. So yeah, I hope that they do finish them before they reveal them for that reason. You're making any balance changes to two-handed weapons? There are buffs to added damage on weapons, improvements to many two-handed weapon passives, and some new mechanics are available that benefit more from the higher hit damage relative to the slower base attack time of two-handed weapons. Firstly, the bad news. This implies that two-handed weapons are going to maintain slower attack times generally. I think this renders them fairly difficult to use in the current clear speed meta. Hopefully, the Legion content changes that a little bit and provides some incentive to do a smaller number of really hard hits, but we shall see. There are buffs to added damage on weapons, so that means that things like the malicious mod, the discharging mod, that add flat amounts of damage of a particular type to weapons. The two-handed ones the numbers on them will be increased. That's been long needed. Improvement to many two-handed weapon passives. I really hope that includes some attack speed ones, and some new mechanics that are available, which will be interesting to see, but we don't have enough information on that. Now my favourite little subtle line here. Will the changes to Mele apply to monsters? Generally, yes. This prompted a lot of rebalance of early campaign areas. Monsters and bosses now signal their damage better with slower wind-ups and do more damage when they hit. Okay, so this prompted a lot of rebalance of early campaign areas. Get ready for a lot of hardcore deaths, especially if you love watching races and the like. Get ready for them to have some explosive deaths early in the game firstly to these bosses. Say people that are confident, oh yeah, I can face tank Mele. Oh shit, no I can't. But more so, get ready for the Act 1, 2 and 3 bosses, map bosses based on them, to be devastating. The one I really want to see is Hailrake's bigger brother Glace, who at the current time, and in fact for quite some time now, has been the boss of the beach map. I think he's going to be really nasty if Hailrake has been made more dangerous. So let's see what happens there. Are you making any changes to armor? Not the core mechanic or base types, but there are some improvements to armor skills on the passive skill tree, and Molten Shell now directly rewards armor investment. In addition, new melee mobility improvements are a massive benefit to your defenses. Okay, so the last point is not really relevant because that benefits evasion and energy shield characters as well. Molten Shell, I actually quite like the state it's been in since it was made instant. I can't remember whether that was in Incursion or Delve, but I started using it a lot in Delve League. Had a lot of fun with it. It's particularly good if you're standing toe-to-toe with Shaper and you're firing off a Molten Shell in between every time he hits you. That ends up doing a meaningful amount of damage back to him, potentially igniting him, which is a nice little bonus because it stops his energy shield regenerating for a bit, and also it takes some of the sting out of his auto attacks. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with Shaper, if you're at range from him, he fires his sort of triple frostbolt attack. But if you're right in melee range, that will be replaced by his auto attack. And the auto attack actually does hit pretty hard, and it's pretty frequent. So you need a little bit of defensive investment in order to just stand and face tank it. I'm somewhat worried about this line, and the reason I'm concerned about it is I think that the whole armor mechanic is being held hostage by one unique at the moment, which is Memory Vault. Memory Vault on a Guardian provides a staggering amount of armor, and ultimately the combination of Memory Vault and possibly the Brass Dome allows a Guardian to get amounts of armor that are in the six figures. So, you're talking 120, 150,000 armor. That is an amount of amount of mitigation that lets you tank. Like, you can't just laugh off a Shaper Slam, but it's also not going to one-shot you. And one of the problems here is that if armor was made fundamentally better, but Memory Vault continued to exist, then builds that use it would end up basically being reasonably close to physical immunity. That's really bad for the game. We've seen with the with various things, shenanigans in the Delve and Betrayal leagues, just how ridiculous complete immunity to any type of damage is. And so I'm somewhat concerned that the whole of the armor as a mechanic is being held down by the existence of Memory Vault. I would be interested to see what would happen if for one league Memory Vault was not available and armor was made better, or alternately, if Memory Vault was given a nerf that affected, potentially even affecting legacy versions of the item, and then after it no longer exists in its previous form, then armor was reassessed. Will Winter Orb survive 3.7.0? It has received adjustments. This is a very polite way of saying the answer is no. Winter Orb. I'm jumping ahead in my head there. Winter Orb is getting smashed so hard with the nerf bat that its descendants will still be screaming in 5 centuries' time. One of GGG's design philosophies when it comes to nerfs appears to be, this isn't something they've stated, but it's something I've picked up from watching their actions over a while. When a skill is overperforming, nerf slightly. When a skill continues to overperform despite being nerfed slightly, then smash it into the ground. We saw that with Arc recently, and specifically with Arc Traps. Arc Traps in Incursion were maybe not the very best build in the game, but they were pretty close to it. Arc was then slightly adjusted down. I believe it was in Betrayal, it may have been in Delve. The change that was made was designed to not affect Self-Cast Arc, because Self-Cast Arc was in a fine place at the point. The change that they made was reducing Arc's mana cost, cast time, and damage all by 12.5%. If you were a self-cast build, that was actually a very tiny buff. But if you were a Trapper or an Arc Miner, then this meant that because just the mechanics of mechanics of mines and traps, your damage output was reduced by 12.5%, and you gained nothing except for a little bit less mana trouble. So then the Betrayal League happens, and suddenly Arc is still overperforming. And it's not just overperforming by a little, it's still, Arc Traps and Arc Mines are still one of the very best skills. So then the next patch, Synthesis League, they take Arc and nerf it so hard that it is still screaming. And what they did there was they reduced the distance that it's able to chain by 50%, which was just a staggering nerf. I think there were some numerical nerfs to damage as well. Basically, that, I won't say it killed Arc completely, but Arc has fallen from one of the best skills in the game to one that is very fringe. Winter Orb, they gave it the same second chance. They gave it a second chance by just dialing the numbers down just a little bit to see what would happen. And it went from the most popular skill in the game to the most popular skill by an absolutely staggering margin. So yeah, I think the answer here is Winter Orb will not survive 3.7.0. It is getting smashed. Can items be traded while they have incubators on them? Yes, incubators can be traded in all cases. Now, I wanted to quickly point out something with incubators. All of the ones we've seen so far, and for those of you that haven't seen the details of the announcement of the Legion League, incubators are a slight little modification you can make to an item that basically it tracks the number of kills you get with that while you've got that item equipped. And once you hit a certain threshold, which we've seen up to 5,000, I think they'll be much higher. Once you've hit a certain threshold, it has some effect. All the ones we've seen so far drop an item on the ground and then the incubator is completely used up. So one example we've seen was a Divination card one. You attach it to an item, you then go and kill a bunch of monsters, and then you get a random Divination card. However, I think there'll also be ones that mimic the effect of a currency orb on the item that is incubated. So for instance, one that you might see, this hasn't been announced yet, this is just me speculating, is an Exalted Incubator, which you then have to charge up. Maybe you need to get 25,000 kills with while you've got that item equipped, and then once you've hit your 25,000, the incubator is consumed completely, and the item will then gain an additional rare mod, as though you'd use an Exalted Orb on it. It's potentially even a way that some of the most powerful currency items of the past, like the Eternal Orb, could even be repurposed and brought back into the game. It's a lot safer because you need to actually play the game because Eternal Orbs were very much a concentrator of wealth. They allowed players that already had a lot of wealth in game to then generate staggeringly powerful items they could then sell to get even more wealth. So they were a very strong concentrator of wealth while they existed. An Eternal Orb Incubator would be less so because you would actually need to play the game and potentially kill 250,000 monsters, which is a sizable fraction. I think it's about 1/3 of the time it takes to level an Empower Gem. So anyway, that's enough speculation on incubators. I think there's a bunch of things that are possible with them that would be really interesting. Now, can Divination card incubators drop a Divination card based on the area you're in at the time? The answer is no. You can't bias the drops from a Divination card incubator by setting it off in a certain area. Will incubation items stack, or we have to micromanage incubators? I'm very glad to see this response. Incubators are valuable rewards from Legion content. While it's certainly possible to spend your currency trading for a lot of them if that's what you desire, the average player will not be overflowing with incubators. The number of kills required to trigger one generally takes a handful of maps and more for the valuable ones, so we don't expect micromanagement to be a problem. They do not stack on your items. This is really good news. This means that you're not going to be sitting there playing around with fiddly incubators. You finish a map and then it's like, 6 of my incubators went off. I've got to set up new ones, and all I'm going to get for them is a Chaos Orb for each second one. Will incubators work with worms and other free monsters? No, only kills that grant experience and items. Are incubator kills shared with your nearby party members? Yes, if you would gain experience from a kill, you'll gain incubator credit. Now, more Legion-specific questions. Will there be an indication of how much time is left on the Monolith? So that's the timer. Once you tag this, you can then go and start killing frozen monsters. Every monster that you kill while it's frozen then attacks you when the timer runs out. We plan to add a timer to make it clear how long is left before the effect ends. That's an absolute godsend. The timer in Incursion is actually something that's really good. It seems sort of quite almost immersion breaking at first, but the more you play with it, the more you realize, oh, this is really good. It helps me make strategic decisions while I'm under time pressure. Do I go straight for my objectives, or do I need to kill monsters first? Do I need to get more time in order to be able to succeed? Will there be an indication of how much time is left? Oh yeah, I was just saying that. Does the Monolith effect always last for the same duration? And it lasts longer early game and less time in the late game. That's really good, mainly because late game you have more movement speed, you have more area of effect. So early game, you see this if you run Incursions early level. Not that you can do this anymore, but back during the Incursion League when Elva was in every zone from the Mudflats onwards, you would find out that you just could not move fast enough in the mud flats in order to actually meaningfully participate with the incursion at all. and even if you did get to a pack of monsters, you couldn't clear them quickly because you just didn't have the area of effect. So yeah, it's important that early game is more lenient with the timers. Late game, as your character gets more powerful, the demands on you become higher as well. Is it possible to free all the Legion monsters before the effect wears off? I like this response. It's possible for a sufficiently powerful build running into a set of monsters that are all spawned close together. We don't think it'll be likely early in the league. Yeah, you also didn't think that players would get past about 1500 in the Delve mines. And that's, I think 1500 hasn't quite been done in hardcore yet, but people have got very close. In softcore, people without immunity builds, so this is in the Synthesis League where immunity builds don't exist, there's players past 2000. Note that you actually do have to deal enough damage to the monsters to break them out, so it's quite tricky to hit that many monsters that hard in such a short time. Yes, players will be able to do this. I think that's just a given, honestly. You know, even if nothing else, players that have a build that's ready, that's been speed farming tier 16 maps, can then just go back to a tier 6 map and yeah, then do it there. How do you break out Legion monsters with minions, totems, stormbrands, and traps? They get intelligently targeted, which is a good thing. Does breaking an enemy out trigger on kill effects? The answer is basically yes, which surprised me, but there will be some corner cases where it doesn't work. Patch notes when? Basically a week from now. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that point. If you've got any questions, fire away below, and get ready because the Legion launch is only about 2 weeks. I'll continue to have videos discussing some of the news that comes out, and you can also follow all of it at the Path of Exile subreddit. The subreddit is actually a really good spot for information, especially if you follow Viperesque, who's one of the moderators there, has made this incredibly useful sticky post, which then goes through a whole lot of information. And you know, I'm just looking here, there's been new information launched while I've been recording this video or when I was driving home from work earlier. There's how a skill qualifies for the physical gem tag, which I hadn't even seen. Anyways, that's all I've got for the moment. Have a good one.